Camilla has grown increasingly reckless, not only in her role as queen beside Charles, but also in the way she allows her own family to step into corners of the British monarch he once thought untouchable. For years, her presence has been a thorn in the side of many royals, especially Princess Anne and Prince William. Refer as her INFLUENCESOLIDIFIES suggested, so too does her arrogance. And this time, it wasn't Camilla herself who made waves, but rather her daughter Laura, who has become the center of a scandal shaking the royal establishment. In what was believed to be a private conversation, but one that eventually leaked to the public, Laura Parker Bass reportedly made remarks that were nothing short of insulting toward Princess Anne, the proud, unyielding woman who has always stood fiercely loyal to the legacy of her late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. It was more than an act of disrespect. It was a direct slap in the face to the already fragile ties between Camilla's family and the rest of the royal family. Prince William's reaction, insiders claim, was nothing less than furious. To him, Anne is not just an aunt, but a pillar of strength who supported him through the darkest chapters of his life, especially when he watched his mother, Princess Diana, be pushed aside and wounded by the very system meant to protect her. An insult aimed at Anne, therefore, may felt like pouring salt into old wounds, reigniting the simmering anger William has long harbored toward Camilla and the turmoil she brought into his family life. The fallout was immediate and explosive, sparking public outrage and raising sharp questions. Has Camilla allowed her family to cross a line, turning the monarchy into a stage for their recklessness and ambition? And more importantly, is William's fury this time the first sign of an open confrontation within the royal family, unlike anything we've seen before? Buckingham Palace has always been a place where tradition meets tension, but sometimes family drama spills into the open in ways no protocol can hide. What began as a simple public event turned into the kind of situation the royal family dreads most: a scandal involving one of their own. The spark came from Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter, whose sharp remark directed at Princess Anne cut deeper than anyone expected. Laura Lopes has often been kept on the edges of royal life. She is not styled as a princess, nor does she appear in the spotlight the way William, Kate, or Anne do. Instead, she lives her life largely as a private citizen, an art curator, and mother of 3. Yet, because of her mother's marriage to King Charles, she cannot fully escape the orbit of the monarchy. Her children were even peating during Charles's coronation, serving important roles. This connection means that whenever Laura does step into royal spaces, her words carry a weight she may not always intend. The event in question was a gathering at Windsor Castle, marking one of the Princess Royal's many charity milestones. Princess Anne, who is admired for her tireless work ethic, had recently completed her 20,000th engagement, a staggering number that proved why she is often called the hardest working royal. There's a reason Princess Anne is referred to as the hardest working royal. In addition to being involved with more than 300 charities, she carries out more events than any other royal. The reception brought together close family, senior royals, and a few invited guests. It was meant to be a moment of recognition for Anne's decades of devotion to service, especially her work with Save the Children and her countless international visits. Prince William attended the event in support of his aunt. William has always shown deep respect for Anne. He recognizes how her non-nonsense attitude and consistency have kept the monarchy grounded even in turbulent times. For William, Anne represents duty in its purest form. He admired her as a child, watching her compete in equestrian events, and as an adult, and he often leaned on her example when handling his own growing responsibilities. On this day, he expected nothing but admiration for his aunt. Instead, he was blindsided. Laura, who had been invited through her mother's influence, was standing among a small group when she made a remark. She reportedly commented on how Anne's old-fashioned approach to duty was out of touch with modern Britain. She suggested that younger royals like William and Kate had brought a fresher energy, implying that Anne's way belonged to another era. The words were delivered casually, almost as though she were making small talk, but they carried a sting that those around her did not miss. For anyone else, such a comment might have been brushed aside, but Anne is no ordinary royal. She has given her life to service with little concern for fashion or popularity. She does not seek applause, nor does she indulge in lavish displays. To undermine that in public, even indirectly, was to question the very foundation of her identity. Some guests froze in discomfort. Others looked away, hoping the moment would pass, but William heard every word. The prince's reaction was immediate. William is known for his measured tone, his ability to stay calm in public, and his training has taught him to diffuse rather than inflame. Yet beneath that composure lies a fierce loyalty to the people he loves, and Anne has always been one of those pillars in his life. What made matters worse was that Anne herself was within earshot. She did not react outwardly, maintaining the stoic composure she is known for. But those who know her well could sense the slight tightening of her lips, the subtle steel in her posture. Anne has endured criticism throughout her life. From being overlooked in favor of her brothers to facing questions about her personal choices. But hearing it from within the family circle, in such a public setting, was a different wound for William. The insult was unacceptable. He saw in Anne a woman who had defended the crown through storms far harsher than anything Laura had faced. He could not stand by silently while someone with no official role undermined her in front of others. But William also knew the dangers of a public confrontation. He had grown up watching how one unguarded moment could dominate headlines and define narratives. Still, his anger was clear to anyone nearby. His clenched fists, the sharpness in his gaze, and the way he stepped closer to Laura showed that this was not something he intended to ignore. The tension spread quickly. Conversations around them faltered. Glasses of champagne remained untouched, and eyes flicked nervously between William and Laura. It was the kind of moment the palace dreads, internal strife laid bare before outsiders. And though William did not raise his voice, the silence that followed Laura's words made his fury louder than any outburst could have, and ever pragmatic attempted to move the evening forward. She shifted the group's attention to her work, recalling stories from her early trips with Save the Children and thanking those who had supported her. It was her way of steadying the room, but the atmosphere remained strained. William stayed close by, his protective instincts sharper than ever, determined not to let the insult fade without acknowledgement. That night at Windsor Castle, William's anger became a story in itself, one that signaled the fractures beneath the royal surface were far from healed. But this was only the beginning. The next morning, William requested a private audience with Anne. He had spent much of the night replaying the moment, his protective instincts sharpening with each thought. William is not one to seek confrontation for its own sake, but his loyalty often drives him to act swiftly when those close to him are hurt. Anne, on her part, was not surprised. She knew her nephew well enough to sense he would not let the issue slide. When they met in Anne's private sitting room at Gatcombe Park, the Princess Royal remained as calm as ever. She listened quietly as William began to speak, his frustration pouring out in clipped but firm sentences. He told her he could not understand why Laura, who owed her mother's position entirely to Charles's marriage, would have the audacity to criticize someone who had worked harder than nearly anyone else in the family. Anne, true to character, shrugged off the insult. "You get used to it, William," she said simply. "People always think they know what this job should be." To Anne, Laura's remark was just another in a long line of dismissals she had endured. But William was not satisfied. His respect for his aunt was too great to allow what he saw as blatant disrespect to go unchallenged. He pressed Anne, saying the family could not ignore such behavior, especially when it came from within. He reminded her of the countless sacrifices she had made, missed holidays, grueling tours abroad, days filled with back-to-back engagements that rarely earned the headlines, but built the monarchy reputation over time. For him, letting Laura's words stand without response felt like dishonoring all of it. Anne appreciated his loyalty, but urged restraint. She had learned long ago that reacting gave more power to careless comments. Yet William's view was different. He had grown up in a world where every whisper could become tomorrow's front page. He feared that if Laura's remark found its way into wider circles, it could be spun as a generational divide within the monarchy, a narrative that the press would seize eagerly. To him, silence was not strength, but risk. Meanwhile, word of the tense moment had already trickled back to Camilla, the queen consort. Laura had always been off limits for public criticism, precisely because she was not a working royal. Camilla had tried to shield Laura and Tom Parker B.S., her son, from palace politics, believing they deserved to live without the scrutiny that William and Harry had endured since birth. But Camilla also knew her daughter could be outspoken at times to her own detriment. When Camilla heard about William's visible anger, she bristled. She saw it as an overreaction, one that risked inflaming tensions unnecessarily. This placed Charles in a delicate position. And as king, his duty was to hold the family together. But as a father and husband, he understood Camilla's protective instincts. He had worked tirelessly to bring his second family into the fold, ensuring that Laura and Tom were accepted, at least privately, even if they would never carry titles. Now, one comment threatened to unravel that fragile balance. For William, however, the issue was not about Laura alone. It was about respect for Anne and, by extension, respect for the crown. His conversation with Anne ended with her urging him to leave it be. But he was not ready to let go. He believed the matter required acknowledgement, if not from Laura herself, then at least from Camilla. That determination set the stage for a deeper rift. William began to distance himself from Camilla in subtle ways, avoiding joint appearances when possible and keeping conversations brief. Those within the palace noticed the chill. For years, William had kept his feelings toward his stepmother largely private, maintaining a polite but cautious relationship. This incident, however, added a layer of frost that even seasoned courtiers could not ignore. To outsiders, everything looked fine. But inside the palace, William stayed angry, Anne stayed calm, Camilla stayed guarded, and the mood in the royal family quietly changed. Informal gatherings grew more careful with courtiers, subtly adjusting seating arrangements and ensuring William and Laura were not placed in close proximity. Charles tried to smooth things over, reminding his son that Laura had not meant her words maliciously. But William remained firm. For him, intent mattered less than impact, and the impact on Anne was clear in his eyes. This tension showed how fragile the relationships in the royal family were. And Charles, caught between them, faced yet another test of his ability to keep unity in a family often defined by division. Keep watching because the tension is far from over. If Anne had handled it alone, the issue might have quietly disappeared. But William wouldn't let it go, and soon the tension spread through the royal family. The first clear sign came at a charity gala held at Clarence House, filled with familiar faces from the worlds of art and culture. Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter, was there too, as usual. As an experienced art curator, Laura was used to events like this. She was confident, well-dressed, and friendly when speaking about her work. But when William walked in with Catherine, the mood shifted. People felt it, something was off, though most guests didn't know why. They could sense the tension in the air. It was clear that something bigger was at play. Laura, seemingly unbothered, carried herself with poise. She chatted animatedly about an upcoming exhibition she was helping organize, laughed with family friends, and posed for photographs. Yet William kept his distance, his expression betraying none of the warmth he often displayed at public events. Catherine, always perceptive, noticed and tried to ease the edges by making polite conversation with Camilla. But even her calm grace could not entirely mask the tension. At one point in the evening, Laura and William crossed paths. What might have been a polite exchange turned into a sharp reminder of the divide, according to those close enough to overhear. William offered a stiff greeting, while Laura, with a trace of defiance, remarked that she hoped everyone could keep perspective about a passing comment. To her, the issue was blown out of proportion. She did not see herself as having insulted Anne in a serious way, but to William, her refusal to acknowledge the hurt confirmed his belief that she lacked respect. This subtle exchange did not escape Camilla's notice. She stepped in quickly, steering Laura away with a protective arm and offering a smile that did little to conceal her irritation. For Camilla, the situation was unfair. Her daughter, who had not chosen life under the spotlight, was now being judged by standards she never signed up for. She whispered to Laura to let it go, but Laura's pride was already at stake. Anne, meanwhile, kept her usual composure. She spent much of the evening speaking with donors and encouraging younger members of the royal household. But Catherine later noted it to friends that Anne's shoulders seemed heavier than usual, as though she bore not only the family's duties, but also the strain of being the center of unwanted discord. The following days brought fresh complications. Palace staff wiki, who were often the unseen observers of family dynamics, began to talk. Whispers about William's disapproval, Laura's remark, and Camilla's reaction made their way through the corridors. While the public remained unaware, the private world of the monarchy buzzed with speculation. The risk William had feared that a single careless comment could balloon into a narrative about division was inching closer. Charles, sensing the fracture, called for a private family meeting at Buckingham Palace. He wanted matters clarified before they got out of hand. Gathered in a small drawing room away from the grand state chambers, the group sat in uneasy silence. William, Anne, Camilla, and Laura were all present, joined quietly by Catherine, who served as a steadying influence. Charles began with measured words, reminding them that unity was the family's greatest shield. He spoke of the monarchy's delicate place in modern Britain, and how even private slights could shake confidence if they ever slipped into the public domain. His tone was calm, but his eyes betrayed his concern. William was the first to respond, stating firmly that the remark about Anne had crossed a line. He spoke with conviction, pointing to his aunt's decades of selfless work and how deeply he admired her. His words carried weight, for everyone in the room knew how much William valued Anne's example. Laura, however, did not retreat. She insisted she had not meant to cause offense, and that her words were taken too seriously. She explained that she had been speaking casually, not intending a personal attack. To her, it was baffling that such a remark could cause so much disruption. Anne intervened, trying to bring balance. She acknowledged the sting of the comment, but urged everyone not to let it escalate further. Her voice was steady, reflecting the same resilience she had shown throughout her life. Yet even her attempt at calm could not erase the charged atmosphere. Camilla then spoke, her voice tinged with frustration. She reminded William that her children had deliberately avoided public roles precisely to prevent this kind of scrutiny. She argued that dragging Laura into palace disputes was unfair, considering she had her own life and career outside the crown. But William pushed back, saying that once remarks were made within the family circle, they held weight regardless of titles or roles. The meeting ended without full resolution. Charles, though he urged reconciliation, could not force agreement. Anne left quietly, as she always did, returning to her work with the unshakable steadiness that defined her. William departed, still dissatisfied, feeling his point had not been truly acknowledged. Laura and Camilla, for their part, left feeling protective and defensive, convinced that Laura had been unfairly singled out. What lingered after that gathering was a deeper divide, subtle but real. The public saw smiles and ceremony, but behind the palace walls, trust had frayed. For William, the issue had grown into a question of principle. For Camilla and Laura, it was about defending their family's dignity. And for Anne, it was yet another burden carried silently as she pressed forward with her duties. The seeds of conflict had been planted, and though not visible to the outside world, they were beginning to take root in the private soil of the monarchy. What followed would test the family even more. As weeks passed, the disagreement between William and Camilla's daughter did not fade, but instead grew into an unspoken barrier at family gatherings. On the surface, everything seemed polished. Smiles were offered to the cameras, hands were shaken, and speeches were made with the usual formality. But beneath it all, the tension remained, and everyone in the household knew it. William continued to feel that Anne had been treated unfairly. His admiration for her went beyond family loyalty. He saw her as the model of duty. Anne's decades of service, carried out with little due for attention, had always impressed him. Unlike others who sometimes sought recognition, Anne worked because it was expected, because she believed in it. To William, dismissing her efforts with a thoughtless remark was an insult to everything the monarchy tried to stand for. Anne herself tried to move forward without fuss. She attended her engagements, met with charities, and spent long hours with her horses at Gatcombe Park. If she carried hurt from Laura's words, she did not show it. But those who knew her best noticed small signs: a firmer set to her jaw, a briefer tone in private conversations, a willingness to leave gatherings earlier than usual. These were not dramatic reactions, but they suggested the remark had lodged deeper than she admitted. Meanwhile, Laura remained firm in her view. She believed she had been misunderstood and unfairly judged. Her life had always been carefully kept outside of the royal sphere, yet she found herself pulled into its politics. At exhibitions and cultural events, whispers about her tension with William began to surface. Friends asked careful questions, and though she brushed them off, the embarrassment stung. For someone who had built a career on art and curation, not family drama, this was an unwelcome shadow. Camilla grew increasingly protective. As queen consort, she had worked hard to find her place within the royal structure, balancing her new role with her loyalty to her children. Seeing Laura caught in this bonny storm stirred an instinct in her to shield her daughter from criticism. She confided in Charles often, reminding him that Laura and Tom had never asked to be part of palace politics. Charles listened, but he also recognized William's perspective. He knew how much Anne meant to his son, and he understood why William felt compelled to defend her. This left Charles in the difficult position of mediator. He invited William to Windsor Castle one afternoon for a private conversation. Overt, he reminded his son that leadership required not only firmness, but also flexibility. He praised William's loyalty to Anne, but urged him to consider whether pressing the issue further would only deepen divisions. William listened respectfully, but his jaw tightened as his father spoke. He was willing to hear Charles's advice, yet he remained unconvinced that silence was the right path. In the weeks that followed, small efforts were made to mend the divide. Catherine extended invitations to Laura for gallery viewings and charity dinners, trying to create space for reconciliation. Anne, ever pragmatic, agreed to attend events where Laura would be present, showing no outward sign of grievance. But beneath the surface, the lines had already been drawn. William's coolness toward Laura lingered, and Laura's pride kept her from offering the acknowledgement he sought. The public, as always, remained unaware of the details. They saw the royal family carrying out their duties, presenting a united front. But palace staff knew differently. Seating charts were carefully arranged, schedules subtly altered, and briefings meticulously planned to avoid unwanted encounters. The smooth face of monarchy was maintained, but it came at the cost of constant quiet adjustments behind the scenes. The deeper question became one of precedent. If Laura's remark could stir such a reaction, what did it say about the fragile ties that held the family together? William's anger had revealed just how protective he was of Anne, while Camilla's defense of Laura showed the limits of blending two families into one. For Anne, it was another chapter in a life defined by service and endurance, where even within her own family, her work was sometimes undervalued. In the end, no grand resolution came. There were no public apologies, no dramatic reconciliations. Instead, the situation settled into a kind of uneasy truce. William continued to stand close to Anne, watching over her with the same loyalty that had first driven him to act. Laura carried on with her career, focusing on art rather than family politics, but aware that her relationship with William would never be fully repaired. Camilla remained protective, Charles remained the peacemaker, and Anne carried on just as she always had. The insult that began with a passing remark had grown into something larger, not because of its words alone, but because of what they represented: respect, loyalty, pride, and the fragile balance of a family under constant scrutiny. And while the cameras never caught it, those who lived within the palace walls knew that one evening's comment had left a mark that would not easily fade.